the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A quick moment of silence in memory of those that have left us too soon. Thank you. Public comment. All right. That was easy. So I sent out the minutes from last meeting. I was a little remiss in getting those out in a reasonable time. Sorry about that. So hopefully, maybe you got a chance to look at them, but there was nothing really out of the ordinary. It's pretty much exactly what happened in the meeting. So I will accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes unless anybody has something that needs to change on them.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Okay, so the meeting minutes are from 5:25 are approved 5-0. So Justin Campo came to see us today. Justin is the town finance director to give us a little presentation on the budget process. Again, we're trying to get familiar with kind of what we're going to expect in the fall, just hopefully to make that a little bit easier. And without further ado, I'll let you take it away.
How is everybody doing? So it's getting that time of year again where we get to do all the budget fun. As you guys are aware, or maybe you're not aware, typically it will start for the committee and the town council the first Saturday of November. That's when we do the town manager will do a presentation and the large departments will essentially present their budget requests and the reason why they're requesting certain things and make points of interest that will appeal to the public for why they're doing what they're doing and why they're requesting what they're requesting. For the actual department employees, it starts roughly now, and it has been starting for a little bit before that, because as you guys are aware, the previous year we worked very hard to try and right-size our budget. And in order to keep that action going, we're making sure we're on top of it right away and going with it to push it forward for this year's budget as well, to make sure that we're not just saying that one year, okay, now we're all even, because we're talking over 10 plus years of default is how the town operated, and to make all that happen in one foul swoop would not be the appropriate thing to do. So as we mentioned, it will be over several years to get us to the budget that we're actually looking for. The first Saturday of November, you guys will all get a nice, pretty binder like this or a PDF document that outlines the budget in pretty good detail and gives a description of the departments as well as what the department head request was, what the town manager request is, and what default budget is. Default budget, are you guys aware with what default budget is?
I'd like an
Why-
explanation.
Yeah, why don't you go through it, because I was not aware when I started.
So default budget is essentially any legal obligation or contracts. Sorry, let me start over. It is the previous year's budget, increased or decreased by any obligations that are incurred to the town. So if a perfect example is union contracts. Those are part of default because they are a contract. Debt service, if debt payments fall off, it falls off at default. If debt payments increase, it increases in default. Things of that nature. Another example, which kind of hurt us this year, was our health insurance. Health insurance this past year increased a great amount. That was part of default and the operating budget as well, but it's something we had to look at and determine all the appropriations across the board for it.
Wasn't default higher than the actual?
Yes. So we have been told to operate within default and below default.
Okay.
And what that essentially is we take areas that we determine we can move around, and that's how we get below default.
So that's not, I
So-
thought that was a one-year effort so we could correct some lines. Like the way some things were funded needed to be changed, like, for example, the police vehicle maintenance budget, right? So that effort to get under default last year Was that a one-year effort, or is that a continued way you guys are gonna be trying to operate?
So we have always been trying to get below default to ask for the minimum amount we need to run the town. We're going to continue trying to right-size the department's budgets and where they need to be within that jurisdiction. An example of how we are able to get under default, again, going back to health insurances. Contractually, we are obligated to budget family plans. If somebody comes on board that's an open position, we can't tell them, no, sorry, we only budgeted a single person. You can't take your family plan. Tell your kids and your wife they have to find health insurance somewhere else. Legally, we can't do that. Default, we have it as a family plan. In the operating, we look at what we have historically done, or not done, what we have historically paid for insurances and what we currently are at. And then we segregated out the open positions out based on that. That obviously gives you a lower balance in health insurance than you would in default, because default is all family plans across the board.
It seems like coming under default is unsustainable, right? Because your default next year now becomes the budget for this year, increasing for any contracts.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons we spent a big effort trying to, because what's happened is vehicle maintenance is a good example for the police department. I think the budget, I believe, is about $4,000 for 20-plus vehicles. They all need oil changes, so that money's gone.
It didn't even cover the oil changes.
Yeah. But because we were told we have to operate within default, and we used to cover, previously we would cover overages like that by open positions. This year we went and looked and budgeted it differently, so that way we could bump that up to a more appropriate number to allow us to build on that going forward.
Okay, that makes sense.
So talking about the way the process works though with the town, and we heard from Lisa McKinney last meeting about how it worked with the schools. Basically, in November, we come in on a Saturday for a presentation from the town manager and from all the department heads, PD, fire, DPW, the library.
Yep.
And that's kind of I don't know what it was last year, like 9 in the morning to like 1 in the afternoon or something like that. On a
I think last year even went for later than that, but it's typically 9 to 1.
on a Saturday in November, usually the Saturday before Thanksgiving,
No, it's
one before that.
Yeah, no, it's the first Saturday in November.
First Saturday in November. All right, cool.
Yep.
We're writing that down. That meeting is called the,
Essentially, it's the budget kickoff or the presentation of the budget.
okay,
The town manager's budget. And then after that, it becomes the town council's budget.
okay. First Saturday in November. That's awesome. I had no idea when that was gonna be until like October 15th, when they were like, hey, we're doing this Saturday. I'm like, oh, okay, great. You didn't know that, right?
I didn't know it, but when it went 5 hours, we knew it.
Yeah. So, yeah. So
I
that's
can-
something to expect. And then after that, we basically come to one town council meeting a month, essentially, is a budget workshop. Agreed?
Roughly, yes. Every now and then, it will be more depending on the topics that come up throughout the budget.
Okay, so,
But it usually is once a month, January, December, it may be 2.
okay, so after that November meeting, we're gonna have some Monday night meetings. After that November Saturday, we'll have some Monday evenings where we have to be at town council. And we'll try and get a list of those in advance, but that is subject to change depending on the conversation and how it goes.
Correct.
So I'm trying to tread lightly here, but one of our gripes last year was that, or one of the things we struggled with as a budget committee, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we felt like in November, we were brought into the conversation, but the train was already on the tracks and heading down the tracks, and there wasn't a lot of influence that we could have or changes that we could make. It seemed like the process was well on its way by the time budget committee got involved. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that we, as a body, feel like, and I know we're just an advisory body, but should we one of the efforts we did is to create a liaison position with you and Mike, so that we're a little more in the loop earlier. Do you see other ways to try and have us in the loop earlier? Or is that not necessary?
So in terms of the budget, it's difficult because I'll be honest, I am changing this book Friday at 9 p.m. the
Right.
day before Saturday, that meeting. So it's changing to the point of all that. I am meeting with department heads. As I said, currently I'm meeting with them to discussing what we need for their budget next year and what upcoming issues we're going to be having. In terms of additional things you can get involved in, I'm not really sure. I'm more than welcome to answer questions that you have throughout it. But at this point, it's discussions with the budget, with the departments to determine the needs. And if you remember last year's budget, and I think part of the reason you felt that it was being derailed is before it got to the town council and to the budget committee, we had already made massive cuts.
Absolutely, yes.
We told the departments that we want to know what you actually need. That way, we're able to say, this is what we're cutting and this is what's happening, because every year we felt like we would come in with the budget at that point already. And when we would say, hey, we need, this amount more, we'd be told, well, no, you don't. You didn't cut anything yet. You haven't cut anything yet because we cut it all before it got to you. This time we showed you exactly where we cut and how much we cut from all the department's requests that occurred.
No, absolutely, I agree. You guys came with a lean budget already. Ron, would you mind closing the door? You guys came with a very lean budget already. I get that. So after that November meeting, we were tasked with coming up with areas, if we found any, that we had questions about or that could potentially save money or whatever. And so we came back with like 18 or 19 questions or something like that, which were then discussed and the town manager and the town finance director weighed in and the town council weighed in, and then either we made changes or didn't based on that. Fair enough?
Yes.
So should we expect the same kind of a plan that after that November meeting, we all look through the books, and if you have anything that you're like, oh, we're spending all this money on whatever, maybe we could adjust that, or what's the story with that? You kind of come up with your red flags or yellow flags that you see, and then we bring that to the town council meetings after the fact. Okay, I'm just kind of going over that so they know what to expect. I was surprised with everything last year because there wasn't a lot of like, hey, this is what you should expect.
Yep. Nope. That's essentially what's happening. And there are some times where the suggestions, we hear them. We may not be able to apply them for one reason or another. I think one of the items was repeatedly overtime. And the comment was, well, if we fill the positions, then we won't need the overtime, which that's 100% true. The problem is filling the positions.
Right.
So if we cut overtime and the positions aren't filled,
That's
we've
problematic.
now shot ourselves twice. And that's one of the issues we had last year is trying to fully explain that aspect of it, of if we're cutting overtime without the positions filled at this point, we're hurting ourselves. Because now we still have to provide the 24/7 services for police and fire, but we don't have the appropriation to provide those services. So we have to then, throughout the actual, not budget year, but the actual fiscal year, we have to cut services elsewhere to be able to ensure that we're able to provide those services.
Understandable. So continuing with kind of the picture of what the process looks like, we come to those town council meetings on Mondays, and then in January, the town council votes to approve to send it to the ballot, the budget to the ballot as it is at that point, yes?
Correct. There's
And-
a public hearing, I want to say the third Monday of January. Yes, because citizen petition warrant articles are due the second Tuesday in January.
And that's the town deliberative session, or that's just the public hearing?
That's a public hearing where the council will then vote to move it to the warrant, which brings it to deliberative session.
And then the town deliberative is when?
It is, I believe it will be the second Saturday in February this year.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Nope, you're good. These are ones that they remain pretty stagnant. The actual date itself will change, but it's going to be that I used a citizen petition as an example. Doesn't matter what year you're going for it. The second Tuesday in January is the deadline for citizens petitions. There's sometimes where it's the 8th. There's sometimes where it's the 14th.
Okay. And last year, we had the school deliberative on Friday night and the town deliberative on Saturday morning. They both take place at the cafeteria at the high school. I was thinking the town one was gonna be here, so I almost went to the wrong place. So yeah, they both take place at the high school. So that's a busy weekend for us.
Yes.
So I have a question. From your point of view, what is our role as a committee to help out? Since we're coming in at like the last hour and you're still making all these kind of adjustments, where's our value for the town?
So I wouldn't say you're coming in at the last hour. Well, hold on. If you're coming in January or end of December with ideas, then yeah, you are coming in at the last hour. But we bring you in November when we first present it to the public. And I'm not trying to deter you by saying, working with the department heads, we're doing this, that, and the other, and then we're bringing it to you. I'm just letting you know that we're talking to the department heads, determining what it is. Then the town manager and myself go through and make cuts to what we feel is a more appropriate budget. And that's where you guys come in to say, all right, well, instead of putting money here, why don't you put it there? Instead of, why do you need this much? You can do it on this much. I looked at the budget versus actuals you gave me, and this one's constantly over. Why don't we move money from that one that's over to from this one that's under? You're able to then also look and say things. You're the budget committee. It's your budget as well as the town councils and everyone else's. It's just technically the town councils. You're able to go through and look and say, hey, why is this going this way? Why do you need this money here? What is this? Why are the revenues changing? That's another one that we had discussions on last year is the revenues. Why are you budgeting as much as you are? Why are you budgeting as little as you are? Things of that nature. You're able to take a look and determine. And at that point, I think I've had conversations with various people explaining the justification for what it is.
Okay.
And one of the things I always tell people, if I'm wrong, let me know. I want to do it right. I'm not going to be stuck in my ways of, no, this is how it's always been. No. Let's do it right. Let's get it right and let's get it done. I wouldn't say you're coming in at the last minute. You're coming in where we're presenting the budget to you. And we don't typically come in and say, we want the world. We come in and say, this is what we need to function like we did the previous year. If you want additional services, we need X, Y, Z more. Things of that nature.
Okay.
Like, basically, if I can chime in, when, on the school side, and to some degree on the town side, we heard from each department head, and we talked about those things, and if we had any questions, we brought them up, and they would kind of like hear from the public, hear from us, hear from the school board members with any questions, and then sometimes, and a lot of times, our questions led to conversations that, in some cases, things got changed, especially on the warrant articles, things got changed because of what the budget committee had to say. Agree, Ron?
Absolutely.
And like one of the things on the town side last year that we went, kind of talked about a bunch, was the wording of the last warrant article, which was basically soliciting kind of the town's opinion on, the, town water.
Yes.
And we went back and forth several times on what the wording should be. And then I think in the end, we got to wording of that warrant article that was clear and transparent on to the public so that we got the feedback we were looking for. It was a little confusing at first.
And on the school side, the line painter.
Yeah, the line painter is a good example. So
Another thing we took out, they listened, so.
right, and some budget
Yeah.
committee members were speaking for getting the line paint. It was like an automatic machine that paints the lines on all the fields. And so some members were speaking for that, and some members were speaking against that. And the same thing with the school board members. They kind of went back and forth, and then eventually the decision was, okay, well, let's take it out this year. So
It was like 50 grand, I remember that.
yeah, and it still may be a good investment, but last year wasn't the year. So we definitely have an active role, and I think we,
Okay.
Yes, I don't want to say we come in at the 11th hour because we don't, but we can influence things during that fall.
Thank you.
I was not very articulate there.
No, it covered it. You're absolutely right. You're able to influence things throughout it. And we listen to what you have to say and we take into account what it all is. And we also take into account what it costs to run the town, what it costs to have the police show up within a certain time frame, the ambulance show up within a certain time frame, what it costs to have the cable access on. All those things we take into account. So some ideas, and I mean, it's governmental accounting is a unique situation. And I use this example pretty frequently, but in the private world, in the private sector, if you're selling pens and you get an order for 5 billion pens, you can hire people to help you fill that order as long as you stay profitable. In the government world, let's use town clerks as an example. If 3 new rental car companies move in and they provide $10 million of revenue, we can only provide clerks up to the appropriation that was approved to us, even though we have 10 million more in revenue that we didn't anticipate. That's one of the things that, people don't always fully understand is we're asking for things to provide services the way that they have been provided. If we want more, we're going to have to ask for more. If we end up having a lot more things like the revenue that I'm mentioning, if that were to, I mean, this is hypothetical, but if that were to happen, the clerks would be overwhelmed because that's $10 million more in revenue that happened overnight. In the private sector, you're able to hire people to come and help. Here, you have to stay within the appropriation that was provided by the voters in the previous March meeting, which could very well be 18 months prior. So essentially, this budget is for 18, 20 months in advance. That's one of the difficult things to get because a lot of times people say, well, if you're able to do that, then just hire more. I can't, if our budget is 40 million, I can't spend 40 million in $1. That's an issue. I can spend 40 million and below. And we work very hard to make sure that it's always below. So that's one of the things that, sometimes people say you're not listening to what we're saying. We are, but we have to provide the services for the entire town. And as I said, when we come in with the budget in November, we've already cut a good amount because we tell our department heads, tell us what you need, tell us what you want, and we'll go from there. Our goal is to provide the best services for the taxpayers and residents of Londonderry at the best benefit to the taxpayers of Londonderry.
I understand. And to be clear, Pat, it is not how you articulated it. It was my impression of the whole process
I
since I
understand.
learned about it. So it is not your fault.
Okay, so you brought up a couple good points there. So the budget we did and that the voters approved in March takes effect next July 1st, not this coming July 1st.
Nope, this July 1st.
This July 1st. Okay, so the budget that gets approved in March takes effect 4 months later.
Correct, and it finishes, because you look at it, we're starting this in November of, let's use this coming year.
Okay,
We're starting in November 23. It's approved March 24. It finishes June 25.
okay. And so just so we don't get all confused with the numbers, because it's a little vague. So the budget we did last year, we called the 24 budget.
Nope, it's fiscal year 25's budget.
Last year.
Last year's, the one that was approved in March.
Yes.
Is fiscal year 25's budget.
But you're saying it takes effect,
24.
No, it takes effect July 24, and it finishes June 25. I was saying this coming year's budget, November 23rd, November 23 is when we start it.
yes,
It goes into effect,
July of
July.
24.
yes,
So that's the 25 budget. We just did the
Yes.
24 budget.
yes,
Okay,
yes. Sorry.
so we're going to be working.
I'm
in the-
already working on 25 in case you can't tell.
Yes, absolutely. And it is confusing because like
Yep.
we call it the 25 budget, or we will call it the 25 budget, but it starts in July of 24. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Okay.
And we're working on it in 23.
And we're working on it in
Yes.
fall of 23. Yes, it is. And that's why I bring it up because,
Yep.
as new guy last year, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what year is this taking place? So hopefully that clears it up a little bit. The other thing you bring up, and that's a good point, is that there's a balance. People in town, and I don't mean to speak for the town, but they want the services there, and they want to have a good police department and a good fire department and the roads plowed and everything taken care of. But we also, all of us, we see the tax bill. So we're trying to keep the tax bill reasonable, but also still provide the services that we need to provide. I think the town would not be happy if we were, cutting everything and not having the services when they need them. So it's a balance. And the chief of the police department brought up a good point that our tax rate is like $18 per 100,000 per thousand,
$18.48, I believe.
and he lives in Goffstown and it's $24. So that's a massive difference, and we are lower than a lot of other towns in the area. Correct me if I'm wrong.
We're roughly equivalent to lower of towns our size.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I would say that our leadership has done a pretty good job of giving people a lot of services for a reasonable amount of money.
Right, and it's important to keep in mind, in New Hampshire, this is it. The property tax bill is it. There is no income tax, there is no sales tax. Live free or die. Your property tax bill that's the only tax bill I always say one of the best things about New Hampshire is if you don't want to pay anything besides federal income tax, you can go live in a place where you can walk to work, rent your apartment, and buy your food not pre-made. You're not paying any tax besides your federal income tax. Because in New Hampshire, it's excise tax for gas, prepared foods, and property tax. There's other ones as well, but those are essentially the big ones that you would be using.
I do want to point out that the school board budget is definitely much bigger than the city. Do we have influence over that too, correct?
Absolutely, yes. So all the meetings that we participate in with the town, we do the same thing with the school side. Same kind of idea, usually, so after that Saturday meeting in November, I think it's like the following Tuesday, or it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, it's something
Yeah.
like that.
Yes, yeah.
I think it's the Tuesday before Thanksgiving is the first school meeting. And they give us an overview. They do it a little different. We come to the town meeting on a Saturday and we hear like the whole budget from all the different department heads all in one shot. In the school side, they break it up. We do one night where we hear from like the superintendent and the finance director. Then the next night we hear, and then a couple weeks later we hear from, a few of the departments like special ed or dining services, something like that. And they break it up into several meetings. It's just a different strategy, but it's the same effect.
Okay.
What do we miss? Anything?
I think that covers a large portion of it. We also get into warrant articles outside of the operating budget. Capital reserve funds, if a financing or leasing agreement isn't currently in the operating budget, one of those will pop up. This previous year, we had some for DPW. And again, that's another difficult one with COVID, not trying to blame COVID here, but the lead times for those trucks it's crazy. We put them out to bid, and we probably won't see them for another 16 to 18 months. But if we don't have the approval for it, then we can't put it out to bid to buy it because we can't hold it until we have the approval.
Right.
And that's again where we have the conversation of, well, wait a minute, why do you need the 3 vehicles? And if you remember, I believe Dave came in with a slideshow of this is the current situation, this is the status they're in. Their expected life is, 10 years. I'm just throwing out numbers here, I don't remember exactly. And we're on year 12. By the time it gets replaced, it'll be year 14. And it's one where, what I always tell people is we're either paying for the repair at that point, which is going to be very, very expensive, or you're paying for the financing payment on the new vehicle, knowing it won't break down anywhere near as easily as the old vehicle. We'll get it, in your own way. If you go out and buy a 2022, 2023, you're going to be, it's under warranty, and you're going to be a lot angrier if something happens compared to if you go out and buy a 1985. 1985, you kind of, all right, well, it's old, it's run its time. And obviously our vehicles aren't that old, but to kind of put it in perspective. And it's one where it's difficult for people. I understand the frustration in that aspect, but seeing the repair bills, they're not small. You're talking about $100,000 vehicles where if something breaks on them, it's not a $20, $30 fix. It's not a $100, $200 fix. You're talking thousands of dollars to fix them because they're $100,000 vehicles. And that's not to mention that if it breaks in the middle of winter, you're now down a vehicle and people still need to go to work and have their road plowed, but we're down a vehicle. So,
Absolutely. I like that we plan ahead, like that we have the capital reserve funds for all the different services.
yep, and that's one that we may be looking at closer this year to determine how we want to handle it with the current interest rates, how they are. It's one I'm talking with the departments on how to handle all these things going forward with interest rates as high as they are at this point.
Because we're better off saving the money in advance than we are taking a loan and
Potentially.
paying it.
Potentially, especially where all these vehicles are also increasing in cost because of inflation.
Right.
So it's one of the things we're looking at, and like I said, when we bring you the budget, we've explored a lot. If we've missed something, please bring it to my attention so we can review it. Because I'm one person. Everyone has different ideas. They have different ways to see it. We work together, we can get the best product out there.
Can you briefly explain the undesignated fund?
Yes. So, undesignated fund balance, as I'm sure you've heard me say previously before, currently it's about 5.5, I believe. I don't know that number off the top of my head. I have it written down somewhere. But it is below where the Department of Revenue, which is New Hampshire's organization, and the GFOA, which is the Government Financial Officers Association, recommend it be. Where that money comes from is it comes from either under expenditures where we have the appropriation, we don't spend it, that goes to the UFB. Motor vehicle, or actually interest revenue on the revenue side is a perfect example this year where we're well over. If we meet all our other revenue targets, that amount goes into UFB. Undesignated fund balance is UFB. That money then can be used for other purposes by vote of the taxpayers. It also allows us to, in a time like this where we're getting 5+% interest rates, it allows us more money to put into investment accounts to grow, to offset the tax rate because we're able to use that interest revenue and still have that base in there. It provides us with cash flow security where we have July and December. That's when the tax bills are due. That's when we have a lot of funds. Come November, May, you're looking at a lower balance because you don't have those coming in yet. It depends on when those bills will start being paid. UFB is, as I said, it can be used for various warrant articles. The previous 4 years, we've put a minimum of $200,000 back towards the tax rate. And this year again, it'll be a minimum of $200,000.
And the greater our fund balance is, the better interest rates we get on bonds.
Potentially, yeah. When we're going for a bond, how we utilize fund balance impacts our rating if we are going to get a new rating for a bond. And also as well as how much we have compared to the obligations that we have throughout the year. We recently haven't had to go for a bond, so it hasn't been as concerning, but there's various items that could arise.
A question.
Sure, go ahead, Tim.
What is the not using a bond or not having any bonds out is almost as bad as overdoing it? What are they looking at us for, like, if we've got, I don't know, $20 million worth of stuff we got to take care of, what are they expecting us on a recurring basis to kind of, I mean, we're not going to take care of it all at once and have a $20 million bond for $20 million worth of stuff. It would be like a $5 million bond for a while, then another $5 million. So what is that balance that they're looking for?
So I don't know how to fully answer that one. I'm going to answer it the way that I believe, and it's mainly a $20 million bond. It will have an impact on the tax rate. Where, I mean, granted, a $5 million bond will as well, but it's kind of spread out more and more.
I was thinking about more in the tax rating, I mean, our credit rating. You know, our budget's like, let's say, $120 million for school in town. We have certain things we have to take care of. If we're not having any bonds to like upkeep for all the stuff, you know, they're like, well, either you're really good with your cash flow, you got really long-lasting stuff, or you're not taking care of your infrastructure and stuff and your equipment and stuff. So kind of, we can't have no bonds because it looks like we're doing nothing. We can't have too much, otherwise we're overspending. So I was kind of wondering what that happy medium they're kind of looking for like maintaining everything.
That's one of the factors, and I'm not trying to avoid the question. I honestly am not 100% sure of what it would be. I think it depends on a lot of things, not just the town, but the current economic situation. How long we haven't had any bonds, how long we haven't had any bonds, when's the last time we had a bond, what's our current debt limit, what's the valuation of the town. All those things kind of go into play to determine, you know, all right, well, you should be having this much debt from bonds and other items.
I mean, think about it, with all the buildings we got, we know that a roof lasts so long, so roofs cost this much, so over a 20-year period that, let's say they last, we should be spending this much somewhere in those 20 years to redo the roofs or something like that. So do they use that as a measurement of knowing if you're taking care of your stuff, or?
I don't believe they get into that much detail,
Okay.
but they look at essentially cash flow, what your debt payments are currently, whether or not you've had the debt. The valuation of the town is a big one, where if, you know, it's a more valuable town, they know that the tax bills will be coming in, and, you know, not in New Hampshire, but income tax, things like that will be coming in, so they're more comfortable providing the bond, and they may provide it at a lower rate to try and make sure they have it, because governmental bonds are typically very secure. You are correct, though, that having zero bonds is bad for your credit rating. Having too many bonds is bad for your credit rating. There is a happy medium in there, but it's not having a bond for the sake of having a bond is just as bad as having no bonds. You need to be able to show the purpose and that you're not being frivolous with the money. Because if you're just going out and getting a bond for the sake of getting a bond to increase your rate, that's not ideal. And I apologize, I know I didn't answer the question. But it depends on as well what agency you're getting the rating from, what they look at. And there's a lot more factors than a simple answer for that, unfortunately.
So that leads to the bond conversation. I'm sorry, did I interrupt? You want something, Ryan?
No.
So that leads to the bond conversation. What bonds do we have that would be coming off in the near future? I don't know if anybody saw the last town council meeting, but the DPW director, Dave Wally, gave a presentation about the need for a building at the DPW complex, which can be kind of explained, full-service building for all his needs.
So from my understanding with the DPW vehicle, and I'm not going to be able to say it anywhere near as good as or as well as Dave would, because he's down there every day and he knows all the benefits and advantages. Being the financial person, he's explained it to me in a way that I understand of right now we have these, as I mentioned, $100,000 vehicles. We don't have a place to store them outside of the weather. Those $100,000 vehicles are in the weather 24/7. That, as we all know, is not ideal for vehicles. So he's looking at it for that as well as various other, I mean, that's not the only reason. Like I said, I'd go back and watch the presentation. He does a great job with the presentation. But the current, if you haven't been down to the DPW garage, I would ask Dave for a tour, and you'll likely be in agreement that we need better facilities down there.
Yeah, we're planning it. We're hoping to plan a tour, I believe, in October. But we went last year, some of us, and it was eye-opening what they're working with down there. And and the need for a building.
Yep.
So I just want to give you guys a heads up that that's coming down the pipe. And I forget, I don't know what the cost of the building is. I forget what it is,
I don't know that off the top of my head either.
but it's substantial and it's needed. So that led me to talking to Justin about what's the story with our bonds? What do we have coming off the books that would help us finance that building so that we're not seeing a big impact on the taxpayers? Go.
So fiscal year '24, so the current July 1st fiscal year, we have $694, almost $695,000 falling off from the multipurpose bond from back in 2003.
Okay.
That right there is approximately just under 14 cents on the tax rate. In fiscal year '26, so a couple budgets out, you have an additional 120,000 approximately falling off the debt schedule.
And when you say 120,000, you mean 120,000, that's the payment that year?
That's the interest and principal payment, yes.
Okay. So how, sorry, but how, that 700K that's coming off in '24, how big of a bond is that we took originally? Is it a $5 million bond? Is it a $10 million bond?
It is just under 11 million, I believe.
Okay,
And we got a 3.82% interest rate on it.
okay. Do you know that? You
Repeat that, what was it?
said 11 million at 3.2% interest.
382.
382?
Yep.
Sorry, 3.82. And the I'm sorry, I didn't prep you with these questions, but the one that's coming off in 2026, that's 120K.
Yep.
How many million was that?
That was 1,158,000.
Do you know the interest rate?
That interest rate is 3.49%.
Okay.
You have an idea what they're going for now?
Not those.
Double that, right? 7%?
I know, that's why I was asking.
The New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank actually will send out an email letting know what the recent bonds are. And I'll be honest, I haven't looked at that email, so I don't want to give you an estimate, but I can tell you right now that the Fed rate is 5.25%,
I was just gonna
and
say it's over 5, so
you're not getting anything lower than that. I'll be honest, I'd be surprised if you get anything below 7.25. And if you do, it's a hell of a deal at this point, although it's not really a deal when you look at some of the other interest rates that we've had. Was it 2 years ago, interest rates? A year ago, interest rates were below 2. We unfortunately, it's one of the things when I saw that is, well, if we're not going to get the interest revenue, let's see if we can save the interest bill. All of our bonds were either too new or too close to falling off to be able to refinance them at the lower interest rate where it wouldn't make sense for us to be able to do it. But that was one of the things I explored to see if we could potentially do it. We weren't able to at that point. This is another one where fund balance essentially could potentially help us where should, a bond go on, we're able to kind of float the payments. Should a bond be approved by the taxpayers, we're able to float the payments and kind of see, when the feds meet, are they going to decrease the rate? Let's wait until they decrease the rate and float those payments for that time, if that makes sense. I believe we did that back in, before I was finance director, January of 19, where we floated a couple of months of the payments of the construction for Central Fire being built because the feds were meeting, the interest rates were starting to fluctuate a little bit, and then we worked with our banking partners and our advisors to determine, all right, do we want to do it in December or January? When are we going to get a better interest rate? If you have a healthy, back at that point, the fund balance was,
over 8.
yeah. And in 5, we probably could, but it's getting closer with the cash flow in that aspect.
We interrupted you. I apologize. Anything else coming off after the one in 26?
27, you have just under 200,000. And that was 2.2 million for 11 years at 2%.
Wow. Okay.
After that, you have 2029, 127.5. And again, these are the last payments. The last payments typically are a little bit lower because the interest slowly declines as you pay out. But 127 and 29 is 127,500, falls off in fiscal year 29. And that one is 1,250,000. And that was at 2.35% for 10 years. And the last one is 434,000. That doesn't fall off until fiscal year 2039. That is Central Fire and the final payment of, or not final payment, the final town obligation of Exit 4A.
Okay, and that was a 20-year bond we took in 2019?
Yes.
How many million was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was 8,490,000.
Okay, and the only reason I was asking about that is because, you know, when we're potentially, you know, gonna have a warrant article next year or the year after for a bond for the DPW.
Dave's doing research and looking to, we want to make sure we do it right. So we're not going to rush it on there, and we're going to make sure the information's correct and that it benefits us the best way possible. Benefits the town the best way possible.
Absolutely,
Question there?
absolutely. You don't have to ask me.
Sure. I want to make sure you're done. I don't want
Yeah, go
to
ahead.
cut it on you. Do you guys, you coordinate with, I can't remember her name now.
Lisa?
Lisa, do you coordinate with Lisa, like, on when the town and the school is kind of looking at putting out big bonds? Because we don't need, well, we're gonna put a new kindergarten in, that's $10 million. We're gonna get a new SAU building, that's another $6 million. We're gonna get a new DPW, that's $14 million. So everybody submits these over $10 million bonds at the same time. Do we coordinate together between town and school to kind of plan how that would go and how that would affect the overall tax bill? Because it really does matter to the townspeople when they're voting, because they're looking at their final bill, not, you know, this is school, this is town, you know, stuff like that, so.
What I always tell people is, you know, a lot of people say that it's, you know, one pair of pants, two pockets.
Yep.
What I say is I only have one wallet. That's how I look at it from my viewpoint for taxpayers is you only have one wallet. You're not, you know, breaking out a check to the school and then breaking out a check to the town. It's one, that's one tax bill. I'm not opposed to the idea. Since I took over in 2019, we have not had to go for a bond. The 2019 bond I mentioned took place before I was finance director.
Right.
The other thing to keep in mind is, as a governmental entity, we are eligible, I believe it's up to 10 million in, what do we have here? In non-taxable bonds that we can do. So if we combine, we don't get 20 million, it's still 10 million for the both of us. But if we have, you know, a $6 and a $4 million project, it would be worth looking at, in my opinion. And you know, I have a very good working relationship with Lisa, where that would be something we would likely explore and try and work out the details with the RSAs of intergovernmental bonds and things like that, where it gets a little tricky. Not by no means impossible, because you'll get school districts that have multiple towns, they do it all the time.
Because the only reason I'm thinking of that, it's easier to sell to the public
Yep.
that we're coordinating together for your benefit, we're trying to get this, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, but either way, this will have to be done. This is the cheapest way we can do it at this time, or that sells a lot easier to the public than just, oh, we want a $4 million, oh, we want a $10 million, you know, or a $6 million. Without the coordination, that makes everybody uneasy.
Yep.
So
A
wait,
lot of people ask about it.
Justin, I'm sorry, Tim, are you saying that it's a better deal if say you were going for a $6 million bond and the town's going for a $4 million bond in the same year, to use your example, are you saying it's a better deal if we get one $10 million bond for both purposes, or does it have to be separate?
There's a lot of factors in to determine whether or not it's a better deal.
Okay,
A $4 million bond likely won't be 20 years.
okay,
It'll more likely be, you know, 10 to 15. The years, everything has to kind of match up better, if that makes sense.
okay,
If we were both going for 20-year bonds, there's a potential that the higher amount would provide a better rate, especially where you're having both school and the town, where you have that sense of security of, in the contract, I can guarantee the bond bank will say, if one fails to pay, the other will. So they have that additional security on top of the fact that you're dealing with a municipality and school district that are already very secure in their payments.
Okay.
We're not a little town, we're not a little school where they have to worry about those payments.
But Tim makes a solid point that some of the big projects coming down the road, like the kindergarten and the town, the school has a long-term plan of when they want to try and do things. Generally, I'm assuming we have the same sort of thing with the town, or I'm hoping that we do, to say, okay, we need to look at the DPW this particular year, and then we need to look at whatever else we need that's a big project. Can we combine those efforts with the town to try and time those things out a little bit? I realize that's not as easy as it sounds.
It isn't, but it is. As I said, it really comes down to, it's more merging the ideas together, and that's essentially what the CIP process is for. I'm not sure, like I said, we haven't had to go out to bond since I have taken over. I don't know if that was done previously or not. I'm not opposed to the idea. To me, if we're able to get a better rate, why wouldn't you? At the end of the day, when they go for a bond or when we go for a bond, the debt limit is the same. It involves the town, the school, and actually the county as well, with how much debt we can take out at any time. So at this point, we have hypotheticals of what we could be getting for bond for down the road. Once those kind of solidify more, it's something that I would be willing to look into with the school district to determine what's in the best interest of the taxpayers. Because if, ours is a 10-year, 4%, and theirs is a 20-year 5%, we got to look to see, well, is it worth it for us to split it out 20 years and pay that extra interest? If we get a better rate in terms, is it better for them to, kind of bite the bullet and have bigger payments? There's a lot of factors that have to be reviewed, and they should be reviewed. But at this point, like I said, it's hypotheticals of what bonds we potentially could be getting. The only other aspect would be is if the interest rates fall, we could look at the Central Fire Exit 4A, but they'd have to fall very significantly because we have a 2.95% on that. So it'd have to be much lower and worth it, because if they're going to give us a lower rate, typically you're extending the term, which you're then paying interest on that extended term. What are you really saving at that aspect? If that makes sense.
Yes. I think you see our point about
Oh, absolutely,
coordinating
100%.
a little bit. Okay. Anybody else? Cool. Well, we appreciate you coming out and answering our questions and giving us an idea of how the process works.
Absolutely.
Oh, we did have some questions from our last meeting. I'm
Yep.
not sure if you emailed me those answers. I haven't.
I figured that since I was here, I might as well
So
address them with you guys.
The questions were, it was actually Ryan. What are the town's large obligations that are due right at the beginning of July? So it's right before all the tax bills are due on July 10th. What are those big obligations? And can they be moved? Did I get that right? Can they be
Yeah, more or less.
Give me 1 second, I have those answers. So by July 15th, we have approximately $10.6 million in obligations. Out of that, $8 million is the school district that we have to pay on July 1st. In addition to that, I believe we had about a $7.7 million. I believe when I sent you the answers last time, it was for your April meeting or May meeting regarding April. So on June 1st, we had a $7.7 million payment to the school district. We also, in June, had a $290,000 finance the master lease agreement with a lot of the vehicles in town that we've gotten approved. In addition to the July ones, We have financing leasing payments of 197-ish thousand for fire department equipment, 25,000 for public works to pick, 25,000 for public works equipment. We have the $694,000 bond payment. We have a $134,000 exit for a central fire, another bond payment. We have approximately, these are estimates because they vary based on the salaries and things of that nature, but approximately $465,000 due to New Hampshire retirement system, $290,000 due to our health insurance. We have a contractual HSA employer contribution of about $213,000. We have our property liability workers' comp insurance payment for about $542,000. And I mentioned the school district payment already. In terms of moving them, it would cost money to, because essentially you're pushing the date back and the interest then accrues, and we'd have to probably likely rework our schedules.
They're not a problem right now, like, so I think
No,
the
when
question comes from.
I spoke not incorrectly. When it comes to May and June, November, December, I get cautious with cash flow because, in my opinion, the person in charge should, because you're banking on the tax bills. The tax bills this past year were due December 29th-ish, and they're due July 10th. They're later than they normally are. I do all my calculations as if a worldwide pandemic was going to happen, which, never could. My first year, that's what happened. So I've done it that way and prepared as though we're not going to get a single tax payment. And I make sure that we're all set in that aspect. When I spoke previously, it was also a matter of me speaking with our banking partners and hearing that next year, the Fed interest rate, they're not sure what they're going to do, whether they're going to decrease it. And I wanted to try and work with the banking partners to determine what we could do to maximize the interest rate of what we have. That way, it benefits us next year. Should the interest rates get cut, we have some interest banked in from July, August, September. So that means you're looking at 1 month, 2 month, 3 month CDs that you review and determine which is the better way to go. Can we handle putting this money away until August? Can we handle putting this money away until the middle of July? I looked at essentially the 3-year average of expenses that we've incurred from the operating standpoint. This doesn't include, I took out school district payments, the large kind of one-time standout items. Looked at that, looked at our current balances, not including anything in investments, just looking at where we were, and determined how much we could put into those bonds, knowing that, essentially an example I have is the school district payment is due July 1st. Well, if I'm going to get an interest rate of 5% on a 1-month CD that I can do May 30th, why wouldn't I? You're going to get more interest than you are in your operating account. The money's going to be available for that school payment, and we're benefiting the taxpayers because it's earning them more money. So when I said we have to be cautious of cash flow, and that's more what I meant, not we have no money. And I didn't,
Tied up.
yeah.
You were cautious that we get it tied up instead of, it's not like we don't have it, we just don't want to tie it up.
Well, exactly. I don't want to, because you look at it, we have ARPA funds. We have a lot of additional funds right now that gives us a better cash flow than normal. And I mean, you have that 5 million. You look at it, and my calculations, as I said, were based on no tax payments until July 10th. It's not going to happen. I'm willing to bet a lot of money that will never happen. But I'd rather err on that side and have the money available earning a lower interest rate than lock it up and turns out that 1 in a million situation did occur. And now I'm calling back and paying penalties on breaking a CD. So it's one of those aspects. And like I said, I spoke with my controller because 2 weeks ago we got our first large tax payment, and it's all right. Well, we're good with all my calculations now because I based it on none of them. like I said, I go through, I use the average expenses, I use the average motor vehicle revenues that were obtained during the past 3 years, and I take a look at where, I try to project out where we're gonna be and make sure that we're secure and that we don't have to break any potential CDs, because you don't want to pay penalties on the CD that you're breaking. It essentially defeats the entire purpose that I was trying to do. So when I said I have to be cautious, I'll tell you right now, come November when you ask, I'll say the same thing. I need to be cautious of cash flow because you're dealing with, you're waiting for that tax bill to come in. You very well could get a lot of motor vehicle revenue during that time that will make it up. In December, it's a little more dicey because you still have the school district payment, you have all those, but you also have the county payment, which is $3 to $4 million. That's the other things to keep in mind, and those, like the county payment, you're not able to move. The county charges you interest if you're a day late. So I'm not sure if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, no, much more clear.
How far do you kind of bump that? Like, if, this is when it's supposed to come in, but you plan on as if it does not come in for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months? Like a pandemic type thing? How do you,
Pandemic is much different. I was projecting for much longer. Right now, I'm only using, I'd say about a month, 2 months, because at some point if we're not getting tax bills by July 10th, there is something else very wrong with the economy that we're all going to be very concerned about. And as I said, we've already received quite a few. So it was just a cautious item, and it wasn't the sky is falling, and I didn't mean it, and I apologize if it came off in that manner. It was more of I want to make sure that I'm doing the best for the taxpayers and walking up. I mean, our banking partners were able to provide us with, I don't know where I put it, between 5 and 5.3% interest, where our operating account is getting between 3 and 3.5, I believe, which it's a couple thousand, but in a large budget like ours, not fully noticeable. But when you do that repeatedly, all of a sudden you're looking at a penny off the tax rate, 2 pennies off the tax rate. Our interest revenue right now, sorry, I have it somewhere. Maybe not. Oh, there it is. I budgeted for about $500,000, $480,364. Before June's interest, we're at $904,000. I was able to kind of capitalize what we had and, to be honest, take advantage of the fact, I think I explained to you, Maureen, that unfortunately for us, the DPW leases, we're getting a higher interest rate than I planned on. So I'm taking that and saying, all right, well, we can get a better interest rate on our investments than I planned on. And I'm trying to go that route with it to try and maximize what we can do.
We
So-
appreciate your hard work in that area.
So the working capital we have is sufficient. You are working under an abundance of caution.
I'm working under caution. It's sufficient. Yes, it is sufficient. We're lucky, not lucky. We have the luxury of having additional ARPA funds that we haven't had to spend yet. So that's another 1-something million, 1-point-something million that is sitting in our cash flow that we're able to turn and invest and use for the cash flow. The sewer fund is another example. We hold on to their funds, so that assists with the cash flow as well. So it is sufficient at this point. In terms of caution, it was more what can I lock up for a better interest rate versus leave at the lower interest rate. And I didn't portray that accurately by any means, and I apologize for that. I didn't want you guys to think that the sky is falling, and that's not the case. It was more just me making sure that I can walk this up and get the best deal for the taxpayers.
Makes a lot more sense.
No, you didn't make us think that. I think it just led us to be curious about, okay, well, how does that process work as far as your cash flow on a regular basis type stuff?
Yep.
Do you have any others?
No?
Okay. Do you have anything else for us, Justin? I think we're good. We appreciate you coming out.
I do have one other quick thing,
Okay?
if I can find it. Nope, that's mine. Oh, here it is. This is just what I typically provide you, Maureen, but a little less detail, more just blunt, basic to the point.
Okay.
It's
Thank you.
budget versus actuals for through May 31st.
Sir?
As you can see, we're looking very well right now. We have a couple, as I mentioned, June payments that are bigger. I don't believe this reflects the May solid waste bill, and I know it doesn't reflect any of the June bills that we have on a monthly basis. The revenues, as you can see there, that's where we're at with that. We're looking good. Where it gets a little misleading, and this is where it's difficult, is if you look, it says we're at 83.5%. That's not accurate. 750,000 of that is from the school district warrant article. I believe another 400,000 are roughly from the school district. No, 750 is from Gilchrist Realty, maybe? It's from the Gilchrist warrant article. Then you have another portion that's from the school district warrant articles where those monies are kind of being held until it happens. So if you take those out, you're looking more closely at 84, 85% at the end, which is still good. But we've had a couple overtimes for fire that have occurred that have bumped it up. And as I mentioned, there's a couple expenses that were paid in June that aren't reflected on this because it's as of May 31st. But I wanted to provide this with you. It's a much more condensed version of what I give you normally, Maureen. I have no problem giving that, but this one just kind of goes straight to the point of, here it is. If you guys ever, as I always say, if you guys ever need anything, you have any questions on it, let me know. I'll try to get it to you as quickly as I can. And I'm more than willing to answer any questions that may occur.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
All right.
See you next time.
Absolutely. Have yourselves a wonderful night.
We have $1 to spend for the end of the year.
Yes, yeah, you used all the budget committee money already. What's up with that?
I can't even buy you guys a water anymore.
Nope. Okay, so, we'll move to liaison reports. Make sure I'm ready with my liaison reports. School board, you wanna start us off?
Sure. Is there anything in particular that you want to cover, Ryan, for?
So I was just going to talk about the,
Thanks again, Justin.
thanks, Justin. They just voted on a private consulting group to come in and review the special ed program. So they are projecting $54,000 to have a consultant come in at the beginning of next month, carrying through January of 2024, with the purpose being to review and evaluate the current program and provide recommendations for areas of improvement to help this, to ensure state compliance. So that's all I got. And I talked to Lisa. She said that they'll be wrapping up the fiscal year 23 financials over the next couple weeks and can give us a better update as to where they're going to be finishing, but that's all I got.
And then there was a presentation for the school board's capital improvement plan with, it broke up like the two Moose Hill projects. So Moose Hill Phase 1, they estimated that would be over $16 million. For Phase 2, that would be $12 million. For an SAU office, $5.2 million. And for the high school addition and renovations, $107 million. And this would be like broken up.
That's all long-term.
Yes,
That's
so
over like
this
a
was
10-year span or something.
Yes, I should have prefaced it with that. That would be over a 10-year span for each of those. So they had a yearly breakdown for the Moose Hill projects, Phase 1 and Phase 2. So for phase one, they were estimating $73,318 annually. And for phase two of the Moose Hill project, that would be $529,854 annually. They did not break it up annually for the SAU office or for the high school.
You said 107 million?
Yes, and what that's covering is an addition for the high school and then just all of the renovations that need to be done to keep the building up to date.
In their defense, there are many parts of our schools that are extraordinarily old. I think there's parts of Matthew Thornton that are from the 1950s. And so that's why they've come up with this long-term plan to try and address some of these things over the next period of time. You guys will get a firsthand look at that when we do the tours in August. But in the same respect, they have bonds coming off, hopefully
Right.
to offset some of that. So it's not all, we're adding more bills. It's a little bit of continuing that balance.
Something everyone's need to keep in mind too, there was a lot of complaints about the school board. The school board's irresponsible. Why were they putting all this stuff off? Why were they doing this? They should have been taking care of these. That's not true. Had they taken care of them back then, they'd have been hung out to dry. Because boilers were available. There was no shortage of anything. There was no COVID pandemic. Nobody was not working. You know, everybody was there. You could get the parts you needed to fix the schools. All those air pneumatic things that don't work now and they want to switch them out to electronic, those parts were available. After the pandemic, they were not available. Now the boilers, that is now regularly 20 years old, is 30 years old, and if they would have replaced it at 20 when it didn't need to be, people would have hung them out to dry. But instead, we've been maintaining them so well that we got it to go to 30 years. Now we're panicking, thinking, we can't get a boiler if it goes down. Well, back then you could. Now you can't. So yes, it's not because the school board was irresponsible with any of that stuff. Things were available then. After the pandemic and everything, things were not available. So the whole dynamics changed over a 2-year period. That's kind of where we find ourselves in. So it's not about any previous board being irresponsible or somebody not doing anything. Times have changed faster than their meetings and stuff to change the maintenance schedule and long-term thing. That's kind of why Bob said, things are different. We got to revamp this and start looking at this stuff. That's how that whole thing got started, you know. So I know a lot of people like to get mad and say they get angry about it because people get angry, but a lot of them is because they don't know the facts of how the economy changed so fast. That's why we're in the predicament we're in, not because the school board or anybody was being irresponsible. Supply and demand changed overnight that fast, and the schools and stuff, and even the town, you know, realized that, oh geez, we got a problem. So they adjusted as fast as they could, you know, but that takes time too when you're going out for bids and everything's public. So that's why we're kind of where we are. So when people come up complaining to me about this stuff, I try to tell them, nobody did anything irresponsible. It's just an economic issue that came up overnight with COVID that created all this stuff that put us where we are. So.
Right, and then they've established this plan to try and, you know, be proactive and replace parts of buildings regularly so that we're not getting really old buildings.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's no, that's all set. And like, but you take a look at the SAU office, it's gone up. What you'd say about $1 million since 20. When did we talk about 21?
That was March
About
of,
2 years ago.
Yeah, it's when they were estimating 4 million. Now it's over 5. So the longer we kick that can down the road, the pricier that's going to get.
agreed.
And that concludes what I've got for the school board.
Okay. Town council, there was only one meeting. It was on June 5th. And thanks to Ron helping me out. They discussed the Twin State Clean Energy Project, which is a project to bring clean energy down from Quebec, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep.
And it's probably 2 years out. It could save the taxpayers money on utility costs. It's supposed to have no construction impacts. It's supposed to use existing infrastructure. And the town council heard from some of the companies involved at the last meeting and asked a lot of questions to ensure that, you know, there's not actually going to be impacts as far as construction goes, and it can use the infrastructure that we have. at the last meeting, again, the members were approved for the CIP to include Sarah. And the Lithia Springs deal was finalized, which is the Conservation Committee purchasing a property which is on the south side of 102 over near the fairgrounds.
Over near the, what is it? It used to be Elwood, I think, flea market.
The flea market, yes, I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with flea market. Fairgrounds was in my
Yeah,
brain.
and like,
I was gonna say, I'm like, I didn't know
sorry, I'm like,
Sorry, flea market.
it's not a flea market.
So the property over there, the Conservation Committee bought to prevent development, and they were able to use a couple of grants for most of the cost of this, which was around $2 million, if I'm correct, Ron?
Yep.
That's a ballpark number, not exact. So they used a couple of grants and some money out of the Conservation Committee's fund that they've established to get that. And there was discussion about the 35 Gilcrest Road property, which is gonna be purchased by a developer from the Conservation Committee. This is a property that was purchased by the Conservation Committee, again, for conserving it, but because of some of the pollutants that had been used on it in the past, or some of the products used on it when it was an orchard.
And the warrant article that the voters passed.
Yes,
sell
so it was not a great property, I guess, for conservation. So a couple years ago, we passed a warrant article to agree to sell that property and then use that money to purchase other property in town for conservation. And so those are the things that are happening right now. That they're looking to sell that property to a developer for $2.65 million, and they're gonna use that money to purchase other properties in town. Which part of that includes this Lithia Springs property near the flea market.
That's the property behind Home Depot, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Gilchrist
yeah.
Road property is
Right.
just behind Home Depot. Cool. That's all for the town, I think. Did I miss anything, Ron?
No, that's good.
Okay. No problem. So Town Hall, Maureen.
I don't have a liaison report this month because Justin was here.
Cool, perfect. Easy, love that, short and sweet. DPW,
So road work has begun the spring, summer of repairing roads across town. So as that progresses, if it's going over, I'll have something to report on that.
okay.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
I noticed when you look at this as of, they're only at like 49.4%. Is that them part of highway operations? Is that our DPW and around town? We're talking about highway operations around town on this, it's on the top sheet, about halfway
Yeah.
down. Because they're only like 49.9% of their expenditures, so I'm assuming it's only because they can only do roads when it's warm. So you
That
got
would
the end
make
of
sense.
last year, beginning of this year, so.
Yeah, because this will
End of
go.
last- Beginning of last year, end of this year, so.
Yeah, so I would assume that I'll check with Dave, but I would assume that since they're starting that paving now and starting those operations now, that's why it's
I noticed
not
there's
nearing
a
expenditure.
$900,000 difference between the original budget and the adjusted budget.
Right.
So I don't know what that is.
Didn't that get? I don't want to say anything till I confirm of what I'm
Yeah, I don't
thinking.
remember why that got changed, but I think,
I remember, was it a,
is that a cost of salt and sand type thing? That the cost went way up, and so we
yeah, but remember
anticipate.
we moved, they just moved accounts, or they shifted something from something? They did a lot of that realignment to put things in the right categories and stuff, and I was wondering if that was from something of that. We could ask Justin when he comes back how that was.
Or you can ask Dave.
Yeah,
Dave
I'll
will know.
just ask Dave.
Yeah, Dave would know too. Because I remember when Mike was here, he was talking about how they were writing the accounts, so money was coming out of the right place instead of where they were taking it from previously. So maybe it was one of those two.
Cool. And maybe that number's low because we had a lower number of storms or something like this. There's stuff like that where we, anticipate a bunch of storms and buy a lot of salt and sand and all that stuff, and then, maybe don't need it all. I don't know how this winter was as far as that went.
Dave had said it was just mainly the one nor'easter that was the big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that, there wasn't. We weren't getting the usual amount of snow, usual amount of need for plow, salt, sand.
Okay. Again, we interrupted you, sorry. You
No, no, you're all set. And
Okay.
yeah, that's all I've got for DPW.
Okay, the PD, I spoke to the chief on the phone, on June 22nd. Nope, that's today. On June 19th, I spoke to him on the phone. He is gonna come in under budget. I think he's estimating between 150 and 200K under budget. He's trying to use some money for some maintenance projects, at the end of the year here. A painting project, which he talked to us about today, and a flooring repair, which I think the combined are about 33K. So he's still gonna come in under budget. He's got 58 officers in the building right now and 4 in the works. And he mentioned another 2 that he gave conditional offers to today. I think that's 2 besides these 4. Anyway, the numbers are, he's trying to get those numbers to come up as far as staff goes. And we had a great tour of the PD today. Sorry about that, Tim.
That's okay.
And it's good to see the care that they take of the building and the efforts that he makes to save money.
How is it, did he mention how it's gonna affect him maybe next year or the year after when he's full staffed? Because they use some of that employee money that they don't have because they can't find anybody.
Agreed. It's
to
not,
offset some of the building expenses and stuff. I know, like Mike Malaguti said, they moved that around so it's in the right, instead of having $8,000 for like a 15, that's not the numbers, but instead of having like an $8 maintenance fund, he really should have had a $20 maintenance fund
yes, so
for the
that stuff
building.
gets corrected July 1st. Those,
Right.
the lines we corrected last year will be much better. And
Is he still gonna be able to maintain it without the extra, because if he's at full staff, he doesn't have that extra employee
yeah, but
money
he's,
to take care of it.
he's not, yes, the idea is that we righted those lines so that he can, take care of the building and take care of the cars without having to use employee money to do that. And he can hire up to 62, I think, before we get into the positions that are being funded differently after last year's budget. But Justin has said that if he gets to 63 and he's ready to hire the 63rd, they'll be able to make it work. So, and it's not an issue yet anyway. As he mentioned, last month I was here saying, hey, he's got 60 and he's got, 4 more out there. We're gonna hit that number. And then he had a couple retirements and things happen. So now he's at 58. And so it's a continued battle. So, hopefully he does get up into the mid 60s and have a nice, robust staff. But I think it's gonna be a continued battle between hiring and attrition. I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. So that's all for the PD. Fire department.
Fire department, unfortunately, looks like it's gonna come in a little over budget, mostly due to overtime. Justin actually spoke to it briefly. They're having delays in hiring,
Okay.
so they've had to shell out some extra overtime dollars unanticipated. But you can see right here, 91.92% used, expended so far. So we're probably gonna come in
Yeah,
tens of thousands of
Yeah,
dollars. over.
barely over theoretically. Okay. CIP. No, it's just kicking off.
Yeah, well, we met. I wasn't there, but they met. They voted for the chair and the vice chair, and they had quorum, and the next meeting will be next month.
Okay,
That's it.
cool. I got some kind of email about it, that they were soliciting ideas for projects or something like that. I'll forward it to you.
Yeah, I did not receive that. So.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I'll forward that to you. I don't know why I got it. Okay, so that takes care of our liaison reports. Department tours. We talked about the fire department, Ryan.
Yep.
At the September meeting. Where did I write this down?
Yeah, but you're gonna move it up a week.
We did
did.
move September up a
Right,
week to the
Thinking
21st.
that the tours will be the same day or not?
Yeah, so I did confirm, so actually Chief O'Brien will be gone. So I did talk to Deputy Chief Heinrich, and he confirmed that they're willing to give us a tour. He suggested, if we're up for it, seeing all 3 stations, so he can give us a full scope of what they do. I
Okay.
know that's a lot of time, so it's something we can table for now and reassess, but
I mean, we could still do that. I don't know how long that's gonna take, but,
Right.
what if we did it earlier? I don't know where I put my pen. We did 5 We did 5:30 today, and that was clearly not enough time.
Yeah.
So maybe we do something like 4 o'clock on the 21st. Could we do that? I mean, actually, you guys aren't teachers, so you have jobs during the day, during the summer. Sorry about that.
Well, it's September.
Oh, it's September. Yeah, I have job during the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
As
So
long as we don't take more than a half a day, I still get paid full day, so I'm okay with that.
is there flexibility with the start time of this meeting?
I don't know. That's a good
The
question.
problem is, if we move the meeting, we have to post it, 2 publications, so much time, a month or two, something like, 4 or 6 weeks ahead of time, so the public knows, so the bustling crowd can make sure they're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
So I don't know if that was another option, if we just push this meeting back a half hour, and maybe start at 5,
Okay,
or even 5:30, we'd get an extra. some
that's
extra
fine.
time in
We
there.
could we do 5? Can people make 5 on the 21st?
And that'll be a Thursday?
Yeah,
fine with me.
okay.
I'll work with me.
All right, so let's try for 5. Let me write this down. So we're gonna try for.
And if you want to push the meeting back, just talk to Kirby, Patrick,
That's what I'll do.
and she'll post it, and you won't have to. It's in September. You have plenty of time.
Okay, so we're gonna try for 5 PM with the fire department. Ryan, you're gonna set this up.
Yep.
On, September 21st. And I will try and move the meeting, I mean, I could move the meeting till 8.
If we're starting at 5, I think 7:30 would be.
Okay.
8 o'clock may not be bad.
Well, because we are going, if we do all
Talking
3
three
stations.
That's gonna
Figure
take
an
some time.
hour per station, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
we don't have what do we have in September? Is anybody coming to talk that day? No, I don't think so at all. So,
I'd be safe with 8 o'clock. That way you got plenty of time, right?
yeah, and so last month we had Lisa McKinney, and that, was the majority of our meeting. Today we had Justin. September, we don't have anything planned.
Yep.
So we would probably have a abbreviated meeting anyway.
Great.
So let me see if I can move BC meeting to 8.
When is the school tours?
School tours are August, where did I put it?
3rd and 24th?
23rd and 24th at 6 PM. It's a Wednesday and a Thursday. So we will not have a meeting in August. Last month, by unanimous decision, we decided not to have a meeting in July.
Break my heart.
So in that case, after today, we will not, I'll see you guys in August for the school tours. And then we'll be doing the fire department tour in September. Can we try and set up, and maybe I don't even have the date for October.
October, I've got it. The meeting would be October 26th. And that's, so a tentative DPW tour. And I'll ask Dave how long he thinks it'll take to go through the facilities, and maybe we, when we meet back again in September, we decide to push up the date, or I'll just communicate it with you.
How about we aim for 5?
Yeah, aim for 5, and
And none of those tours are required. If you can't make the tour, it's not that
Yeah.
big of a deal. So we'll aim for 5 for the DPW tour.
Yep.
And that's the 26th.
yes.
Okay. So yeah, we just talked about the planning of the department tours, and we talked about the meeting schedule. So after October 26th, we will have a much more robust schedule with the Saturday morning town council stuff and the school board stuff on Tuesday nights. So actually, Lisa sent me the other day the tentative schedule for the budget process in the fall for the school. So I will try and put together a spreadsheet that shows what dates we'll have stuff. Awesome. That way we
Tim,
have.
do you still have access to that spreadsheet we had last year? Because that was amazing.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, you have it? Okay.
Yeah,
we
Jen
gave it
sent it
Just-
to me.
that was fabulous.
I do, but we gave it to everything, I gave it to, I think you
Oh,
even have
right.
it, even Chad still has it too. But I
Okay.
gave it to Justin to give to put it on the town.
Perfect.
What's it called, forms thing, so their Office 365 account, whoever they want to put it under with forms, can actually upload and do all that. If they got a problem with it, tell them to let me know.
Yeah.
And I can help them with it.
Because I think we
Real
all agree
simple.
that was very helpful.
Because even you guys could look at it without,
Oh, yeah.
having to download it. I mean, you could see it
Mm-hmm.
online.
So speaking of that, so I have if you're talking about the spreadsheet with all the
Yeah.
different dates, I have that, and we'll do that up and make it look pretty. And we talked briefly last month, I don't know where I put up my notes, but we talked briefly last month about the community services grants, and how that process works. Am I using the right name for that?
Yes.
Okay. I wrote it down. Yes, the community service grant process. So, Tim, refresh our memory on time frame for that. So, we get the applicants in like
I
October.
think Kirby would send out invites to the previous year applicants to let them, or anybody. I would take everyone over the last 3 years that responded or whatever and say, hey, guys, this is coming up again, you need to fill this out online. And I think the most we ever had was 18. I don't know if they all, I mean, we sent an invite to all of them. If there's anybody you know about, you could tell it to them. If there was somebody that, charity organization in town or that helps the town, they can apply. If they don't know, you can tell them about it and stuff like that. I think they even, I don't know if they put it in the paper one year or not, as a thing for anyone who wanted to submit a request for it. And then as they come in, they would forward it over to you. Keep track of who those people are, and you'll know because they'll fill it out online. And then the email should come with the responses to you. And what we try to do is, as you get them, kind of disperse them to everybody so you don't get them all at once. And then here, everybody, here's 18 of them to go through in a week.
Okay, that's definitely what happened last year. We got them all at once. We got all, so what we did was they sent us like a spreadsheet, and we may have talked about this last meeting, and I'm repeating myself, but they sent us a spreadsheet with, where we put in our suggestions for what each applicant should get, of the 50K, and then they sent us a PDF of everybody's application, so you could read through each business and find out, what they do.
Was that your program, Tim? 'Cause that was good too. It
It
get
was
sent
kind
out to
of-
each of us, and then we each put our recommendations in, and then it averaged it.
I have it from Jen.
Oh, okay, from Jen did it,
That was
okay.
kind of like, I think it actually started online with Chad.
Okay,
He was the chair.
okay,
Makes sense.
So,
But yes,
it's very good.
came through.
I have that, and I'll get that squared away when the time comes, which I think is October-ish.
Yep,
So,
Yeah, but if they can, as you tell either Kirby or whoever's gonna manage it from the town side, when you get an email response that somebody filled it out, forward it over so the budget committee can kind of read them as they get them instead of waiting to the last minute and have to
Okay.
read all of them in one night.
I can do that.
Because that was a lot of hours.
Yeah.
So,
Cool. Okay. I don't think there was anything else we talked about that I missed. Everybody hopefully is getting a reasonable idea of kind of what to expect come the fall, so we're not surprised.
What about the missing budget committee member?
Ah, okay, so, yes, good question. Evidently, when they posted the, like, planning department vacancies, there were some other vacancies in town. Budget committee was on that. And no one put in. And so,
did it hit the newspaper? I didn't see it.
it was in the,
No,
there was like
it was
several
online.
vacancies all
Yeah.
together that went out, and people put in for planning, and people, so it went out, but I think that people missed the fact that the budget committee was on there. At any rate,
Yep.
we reopened the position, I don't know the day, like a couple weeks ago. So we're in the window right now for people to put in, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, but I think one person is put in. I called, the town manager today to try and verify that. And I left a message for him. So I think one person is put in, and hopefully there's a town council meeting
not till July 10th.
July 10th. So ideally, we get applicants and they approve somebody at the July 10th meeting. So if you know people that want to do budget committee,
So what's the process in the meantime? So they
they,
approve
they
one.
just, they contact Kirby, and there's a short application to fill
Sorry,
out.
so say we get 5 applicants.
Then they would
Go through the
discuss
town-
that at the town council meeting, and they
So
would choose, yes?
what we do is we interview them. So Kirby would invite them via email to come to the meeting, and then we would interview them. And then depending on how the council feels, they may appoint people that night, or we may wait until the following meeting. It depends on the vibe, if they feel like there's 5 people and they want to take a little longer to evaluate, they might wait till the next meeting. Otherwise, they may appoint that night.
That works?
Sometimes it depends on how
Yeah.
qualified the candidates are, whether they wait or whether they,
Yeah.
if they get somebody who's, president of banking for government, they're like, yeah, why don't we put him on the.
Yeah.
I think someone did apply for that first posting, though.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
okay. I can follow up again.
Kirby would have all that information.
Okay, at any rate, hopefully by the time we get to the school board tours in August, we have a seventh member of the budget committee. And they're gonna be the primary town council liaison. I'm just saying that. Cool, so, anything else that I missed? That was a good catch on that.
Since we don't have that in the meantime, why don't we just delegate town counselor as the liaison to the budget committee? Who's
Well,
already
that's
here?
kind of how it's been working, to be honest.
I'm fine with that. I really don't mind.
It's not like
So
he
we
wasn't
don't-
on the budget committee,
Yeah.
so.
We don't need any liaison reports in July. So you don't need to, unless you want to just maintain an open line of communication with your department, great. If not, you don't need a liaison report in July. We technically don't really meet in August because we have the school board tours, so we really don't need a liaison report in August. So summer is a smooth sailing.
Yep. But September, we got the 3 fire departments, so if we're gonna do liaison reports that night, it could be a kind of long night.
That is a fair point. Although that should be the only thing we have on the agenda that night is just liaison reports.
Yeah.
So hopefully that won't be too bad.
Well, then everyone who's gonna pile in for public comment as well.
Cool. So
Motion adjourned?
anything?
Wow, look at
I like this guy.
it's like.
Can we get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, so we'll see one another in August at the department tours.